Growing up in the message, there was one prophecy that I felt was the easiest to prove, and I used it often as I witnessed to other people while attempting to recruit them into the message. The prophet claimed that cars would become shaped more and more like an egg. When I compared cars today with photos of the cars in the 1930s, they were much different. Both an artist and an old car fanatic, I used to sketch pictures of old Model T Fords, Chevy 490s, and the old Roadsters. My favorite was the 1934 Rolls-Royce Phantom II, with its solid chrome front end, bulging round headlights floating around the long curved fenders, and the pointed grille, and the chrome silver wraith hood ornament. When I compared the old, squared, boxy style of the vehicles of the 1930s, it was easy to see that more aerodynamic cars of today were shaped like an egg compared to a rectangle. But if the first time that I could find this prophecy mentioned was in the mid-1950s, could I really say that it was a prophecy? This was the first prophecy that I began to research. I knew that I would never prove that the prophet didn't have such a vision in 1933. It was impossible to prove a negative. And since his proof had allegedly been buried for no one to see, I knew that many questions would remain forever unanswered. I also knew that through my research I could get a better understanding of what it would have been like for a believer in 1933 if this prophecy had been announced before Roy Davis fled town. All I needed to do was search through some old newspapers in the archives. As I began to study the archives, I found that in the early 1930s, thoughts of egg-shaped cars were nothing unusual. In fact, you could easily read about the new and upcoming designs in newspapers local to Jeffersonville or around the world. By 1930, American and European engineers were preparing for a radical change in the automotive industry. New body shapes were being tested in wind tunnels for aerodynamics. As a result of these tests, many engineers predicted that the future of design of automobiles would be egg-shaped. Everyone from analysts to journalists were predicting how the change would come. The Associated Press picked up the story in 1930, and papers from coast to coast described egg-shaped cars. If this was prophesied in 1934, or even in 1933, wouldn't people have rejected it as simply an informed prediction? In the August 17, 1930 issue of Arizona Star, citizens of Tucson, Arizona awakened to read an article entitled "Automobiles Still Due for Many Radical Changes," describing the new and upcoming designs. The photo selected for an example of the prototypes under consideration looked exactly like the curved, egg-shaped automobiles that would soon be rolling off the assembly lines. An article stated, "As a result of these tests, we may be riding in egg-shaped automobiles if our aesthetic senses will permit." That same article, put out by the Associated Press, appeared in newspapers in multiple cities of multiple states around the United States. Citizens of Owensboro, Kentucky read the same article with the title, "Days of Gasoline Engines Not Numbered," declared. The anticipated change of the automobile industry fueled enthusiasts for the next several years, especially the egg-shaped design. Newspaper articles with titles such as "Egg-Shaped Automobile Predicted for Future," found in the April 25, 1931 Ottawa Journal, spelled it out very clearly. Automobiles were changing, and soon. One does not need to be a prophet to make this prediction. All that was necessary was to read a copy of the local newspaper. It was very easy to learn about the automotive industry and the innovators of the 1930s simply by reading the news. I came across a newspaper article describing a quote-unquote prophetic book written by designer Bel Geddes. Horizons, written in 1932, described how the world would change as technology advanced. Newspapers, magazines, and casual readers were fascinated with Bel Geddes' automotive design. According to Bel Geddes, the egg-shaped aerodynamics were the wave of the future. Horizons had architectural designs for not only the egg-shaped car, but also the egg-shaped bus and other vehicles. These designs look very much as if the architect had taken a pencil and traced the outline of a chicken's egg, sketching the bucket seats, a dashboard, steering wheel, and outlines of a window inside the oval shape. A side view depicted the vehicle's side profile, which made the egg seem slightly larger in the front and smaller at the back. Bel Geddes' designs were so incredible that they appeared at the 1933 World's Fair. I remember the prophet talking about visiting the fair in Chicago, and I was suddenly curious to know more about the prophet's glimpse into the future, designed by Bel Geddes.